Welcome to the Dice Tower, a series of video reviews about board and card games. Here are your hosts.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Z Garcia.
I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
And I'm Mike Delisio.
I'm excited, or I was very excited about this game we're talking about today, Now and Never from Ryan Laukat, which is sort of an unofficial third game in a trilogy, starting with Above and Below, Near and Far, and Now or Never.
I don't think it's very unofficial.
I think it's
official, yeah. I think this is the official third of the trilogy.
In the world
There's
of
no
Arzium.
1, 2, and 3 on it.
So it will be.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
fine.
an evolution, right? They've all sort of become part of the same world, or they are
Yes.
part of the same world, and each one's an evolution on the last one in many ways.
Right.
And it's all set in his same world, and I always forget the name of this world.
Arzium. Yeah.
Arzium, which I believe Sleeping Gods touched us in this world to some degree.
I think it's
don't
the same
know.
world, but it's not part of the trilogy.
Yeah,
Because
it's
there's
a-
another one of the smaller games that's set in that same one as well, Rome.
Rome is also
Actually, I think all his games are to some degree.
Really?
No, I think on the back there's actually a space that says like if it's set in Arzium.
There's a world logo, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even 8-Minute Empires might be technically.
And speaking of
it
that,
might be.
his world's a weird one because in this particular world, I came across, and Now and Never, just
Or
a
Now
side
or
note,
Never.
Now or never.
Now or Never, I came across a bunch of pigmen hunting a boar,
Yeah.
which I thought was weird.
Well, you know.
Well, pigmen are
Cannibalism?
intelligent creatures that have evolved past boredom.
Oh!
All right. With that being said,
4 out of 10. 4 out of 10 for that joke. Do not recommend.
Let's
Oh,
get-
I need a drink. Excuse me. I'm parched after that.
Mike and myself are going to show you how the game plays, and we'll be right back.
Here we see a starting setup for Now or Never. In the game, you're going to play through 6 rounds or seasons, and you're going to be traveling around the map, fighting enemies, searching locations, ultimately trying to rebuild your ancestral village by placing these buildings onto this board, and hopefully trying to have the most victory points at the end of the game. In the game, you play as one of 4 asymmetrical characters. I have Namal showing here for my example, but you could also play as Zeke or Mark Loon or Halia. The asymmetrical nature comes into play with their special abilities. They all have a special ability that is unique to the character. They also have unique actions here when it comes to combat, different types of combat, and they have different amounts of mana that you can see represented by these blue diamonds down here at the bottom. All right, so in the game, on your turn, you're going to do one of 2 types of actions. You're either going to take a specialist action or you're going to take a hero action. So I'll go briefly through both of those and explain how they work. If you're going to take a specialist action, what you're going to do is you're going to use either one of your specialists. You start with 2 starting specialists, or you can also utilize the specialists on other player boards in the game. What you'll do is you would pay the top amount of that coin amount there and take the associated action. So this specialist here is a build specialist. If I wanted to activate this character, I could spend 5 coins, take a build action, and then I would flip it over to show that it could not be used again until the next season. If I were to take someone else's action, I would pay the top amount, and then they would get this bottom action, which would be called the tax. So if someone were to use mine, they would spend 5 to use it, and then I would get 3 coins from the supply as a tax. But it would be flipped over in either effect. All right, so that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is you can just flip them over to either get 2 hearts or a coin. If you are kind of desperate, you can do that. You're running low on hearts. The other thing you can do is you can recruit a specialist, and there are always going to be 4 specialists on offer there. And to do this, you pay double the amount in the top left. So in this case, if I wanted to hire this specialist, that would gain me 2 experience and 2 hearts. I would spend 6, and then I would immediately place it on my board. I have 4 slots there, and I would turn it over. I would take the associated action. But now I've got this character for the rest of the game. Unless I filled up all my spots, wanted to take another specialist, I would have to remove one of them. So that's your specialist action. Either using yours, using somebody else's, or recruiting a new one off the board. The other thing you could do is you could take a hero action. So it's going to be either or. If you're going to take a hero action, there are 3 steps to it. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to move, then you optionally will play a quest card, and then finally you'll either visit a location, search, or fight an enemy, and then I will now show you briefly how those work. All right, so if I'm going to take a hero action, everyone starts here at this monument space. You have 3 hero actions that are available to you on your player board. The numbers there are associated with the number of spaces that you can move orthogonally around the map. So let's say that I wanted to go to the Scholar's Tower here. I start at the monument. I could use this top hero action because that's only 2 spaces away. To do that, I can either go here, or I can go here and then here. I would probably want to go this way because on the board you can see the small notation that shows mountains. If I, for one reason or another, chose to go this way, I would have to lose a heart. You lose a heart every time you go through the mountains. Also, if you wanted to push yourself beyond your bounds, so in this case, let's say I only had that 2 hero action available and I needed to go further. Let's say I was over here and I wanted to get over there. I could go 1, 2, and I'd have to go an extra 2, 3, 4. I would have to spend 2 hearts. So you can overexert yourself to move further than your hero action normally would allow. Once you have done your movement, then if you are in a location that matches one of your quest cards, you start the game with 4 quest cards. All of the locations you can see are in this kind of red banner here. You could play this card to that associated location and get whatever it tells you. Sometimes you have to pay to use the card, other times you do not, but you can see they're going to have victory points at the end of the game. Sometimes they just have some flavor text like this one. Other times they're going to give you something associated, all right, and the costs are up here. All right, so you play the quest card if you want to, and then you can either visit the location. So in this case, I can visit the Scholar's Tower. I can spend 3 coins to gain a book resource here, which I would just track on this track on the bottom of my player board. Or if I instead wanted to search, these search tokens here will show you that you can search. So throughout the board, you can see there's a number of these search tokens laid out. Instead, if I wanted to do that, what I would do is I would roll this 4-sided die, and I'm going to spend the amount of hearts that it says, in this case 2, knock down 2 hearts. And then I would flip this over, do whatever it says, in this case, give me 4 coins and a quest card, and then I'm going to place this on my board because this is going to give me a coin during every production phase. All right, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So those are the 2 main things you can do, specialist action or hero action. When you build, you're going to be building one of these buildings that are here. Everyone has the same array of buildings, although they're going to be laid out randomly in this 5x4 grid. And you're going to choose, your first building has to be something in the outer area here. So let's say that I took a build action, I did a specialist action to build, I spent my 5 coins, I flipped this over. Then I have to choose one of these outer buildings here. Let's say that I wanted to choose this building here. It's 5 coins. And it shows me a couple of things. It shows me what it's going to produce during the production phase, in this case, a shell. This also tells me that this has an extra bed. Each building that you place in your village will house 1 villager. However, if it has this bed symbol, now it shows you can actually house 2. So the first building that you place has to be on your starting row down here with that heart, or that star, excuse me. You could place it anywhere you wanted to in that row. Let's say I placed it here. By placing it down, I'm covering up that shell. I would gain a shell resource right away. Sometimes you have costs. Here you have to spend an extra 2 coins. Here you would gain a tool, here you would gain a book, etc. Okay? Once you have placed this building down, now, as I said, you have spots where you can house villagers. Throughout the game, you'll be gaining villagers. The symbol when you gain a villager is right here, that little kind of person symbol. All right. When you gain a villager, you'll choose one from the array, and you don't have to immediately place it in your village. You can put it into your player board, but when you want to, as long as you've got a space to place it, you will put it in that associated row towards this end. You gain points if at the end of the game you have all 4 of the different symbols represented here in this row. You'd get 5 points. Also, when you place new buildings, they have to be adjacent to buildings you already had. And so if I was to build again, you could choose one of the buildings that are adjacent to the open spot. I can build this, this, or this. Let's say this one I built here. Now, if I fill up this row, at the end of the game, I get 6 points, then 7, then 8. And you can see the points are going to go up if you can also get villagers into those associated locations. There are also some anytime actions that you can take, selling goods for coins, which you are going to do frequently throughout the game. Money is very tight. You look up here at the market and it shows you the distribution of coins for the types of goods, so you'll oftentimes be doing that. You could place a villager in housing, as I mentioned to you before. You can spend experience on a hero ability. So at the beginning of the game, you have these abilities that you can use to buff up your starting kind of stats for your primarily for your combat. Like, for example, this pound ability, it would cost me 1 experience to do so, but then I could cover up one of these. Why am I going to do that? Let me explain how combat works. Throughout the board, you'll see seated these monsters, and they are represented by their level here. So this is a level 1 monster. It shows you the health that it has, the amount of damage it does, and the boons that it gets. So let's say that I had come here and now I'm fighting this monster. Let's say I started with full health. What you're going to do is you are going to roll your 4-sided die, and it is going to be represented right here. This is your 1 ability, 2, 3, and 4. So I roll the die. I rolled my 1. It means that I'm doing the double fist action. I do 2 damage to the creature, and I could spend additionally a mana to do a 3rd one. So let's say I spent a mana here. Now I'm doing 3 damage to that creature. It has only 7 health, so it has 4 left. It does 2 back to me. I have no shields. If I had somewhere else gotten one of these kind of blue abilities, defensive primarily, that would block one of those. But let's say I didn't. So it would do that back to me. I would knock down 2. At this point, I could keep going, and I likely would. If you ever choose to retreat or you ever lose, you gain a experience as kind of a compensation, and then you have to heal up and you could attempt it again. But let's say I kept going. I needed to do 4 more damage. I rolled a 3, so that's a slam. They're down to 1 health. You would keep going back and forth until you eventually defeated the creature or lost or retreated. So let's say I defeated this creature. I would gain a villager. I would gain an experience. Okay? As you can see, these abilities can get increasingly impressive. You can get a scaled sword here. You can eventually do up to 12 damage with this if you spend a mana. All right? So a nice way to kind of buff yourself up for fighting these ever-increasing creatures. After everyone has taken the hero actions or the specialist actions, then you're going to go into the production phase where you're going to collect produced goods, collect a coin per search token, refresh all your mana, reset all of your actions, your specialists flip back over, your hero actions come back over. And so in this case, I would be getting a couple of shells here because I've got a shell here and a shell here. You just gain those during your production. You'll play through your 6 seasons, and whoever has the most points at the end of those 6 seasons has rebuilt their village to the best, and they are the winner of Now or Never. That's the standard mode of the game. Tom's going to come in here, and he's going to explain to you how the story mode of Now or Never works.
When playing the story mode, you play through the game in chapters. I don't know that it's necessary that you can't just pull, like, for example, Chapter 3 and play it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But you start with Chapter 1, and you use 1 chapter per game. You keep track of your progress on a sheet included with the game. In fact, they also have fully voiced acted audio narration, which I think is purchasable from another website. But at the time of me playing the game, this wasn't available, so we just read it. There's a bunch of components that are used only in story mode, but story mode uses the same setup as we've already seen. At the beginning, there's an introduction to the chapter. It tells you what extra pieces you might need, what other setup there is, and then each character playing has their own introduction that you read. The way story mode works is when you go to one of these tokens here, instead of rolling a die, flipping it over to see what you get, you're going to look at the letter that's there. So this one is on letter E, and you'll look at your character. So this is the robot. So I look up the robot for letter E. You read what happens. Someone else reads it to you, and they give you 2 choices. Sometimes a choice will lead you into a combat. sometimes it has a skill check. Skill checks are pretty simple. You are simply going to roll the die. Let's say it's skill 6. I roll the die. I get a 3. That's not a 6. So I would spend 3 more hearts to equal that skill to pass it. Hopefully I can pass it. If you don't pass it, you fail and get nothing. I could also spend an extra 2 to get a bonus. Once you do, it tells you exactly what happens, and much of what's happening is going to be on the other side of this board here. There's now a reputation track. Each player will put a piece here to keep track of your reputation. At the end of the game, whoever has the highest reputation gets 3 points, and you'll also get another amount of victory points or lose victory points based on where your reputation are. They also give you rewards, and they give you more rewards if you get the bonus. That's basically it. The token will come to you, but sometimes the quest might say, remove the token and get, a villager who comes and joins you, or something like that. But if one person does the letter A, the other players are not going to be able to do it. That's it. It's just these 2 pages here that add to the story. Shows you how to mark, the campaign. You can play through, like I said, all 6 books if you want to and keep track of your points overall. Although I suspect that I would just play 1 at a time. So before we get into this, I want to talk about backgrounds on this. So Above and Below, I thought was a fine game. I played all of the games. Above and Below, I thought was a fine game. Near and Far is one of my favorite games of all time. So I was looking forward to see what the next one would be. Have you all played all the games?
Yes, I have.
I played Above and Below, which I really like, and I've not played Near and Far.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so that's kind of where we're coming from with these games. But I also knew it was going to be a different game. I wasn't expecting Near and Far Part 2.
Sure.
And that's good because it's not.
It is not.
I feel like it has a lot of Above and Below and a lot of Near and Far, and you said
Islebound.
Islebound.
Which is fine. You use the same mechanisms.
Sure.
And as with all his games, it's nicely produced. He does his own artwork.
Absolutely.
This game comes with a ton of components.
It barely fits back in that box.
Yes,
Right.
that's true. It's the same
That's
size.
kind of insane.
Yeah, it's the same
Right.
size box as Near and Far. I'm pretty sure. If not,
It
it's
is.
very close.
Yeah.
But yes, this is more fully packed than Near and Far is.
I have 2 minor complaints about the components. One is the markers that you use at the bottom to keep track of your resources are funky shaped, which is cool, except they're on top of each other and they fall off and get moved all the time in the
Yes.
games I played.
That is
I
true.
really struggled with
I
that.
would
that
rather
track.
them just all been round discs so they stacked better.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, they're
That's
nice
fair.
screen printed wooden things, but you're right. The usability is not what it could be.
It takes a little hit. The usability
Yeah.
does take a little hit. Yeah.
And then the other minor complaint, and this one is a me thing, I guess, is that I just could never remember where anything on that map was. I was like, the
Right.
thing where you change heart, get money for hearts is over here. This comes with time, I guess.
Yeah,
But
that didn't bother
that
me.
one
better.
didn't. Yeah, that was
What-
not a problem for me.
what about finding that you have a card that says you need to take this to that spot? You got to figure out where that is on the board. Unlike Ticket to Ride, it doesn't say what quadrant of the board it is.
Well, because it may change, because it might be linked to one of those locations that are randomized.
The
at
modular
beginning of the
ones.
game.
by the way,
So
it
Right.
randomizes locations. I was like, who cares?
there's only 3
It
of
was all
them.
that it was there 3, that it wasn't all of them. You
And
know, some of them
thematically-
Sure, so
were-
then why not just put them on the board?
Yeah,
Right.
Why have them
thematically it
randomized?
might be a little bit confusing too, in that if you're playing it in the story mode where you're going through this kind of campaign, why is this location somewhere different in the world than it was in the last one?
I didn't think about that.
Right.
So I think you mentioned that. Yeah, the one kind of component issue beyond, I definitely agree with the tracks, is that, and I think you and I even mentioned this, is that the mountain symbol is a little bit hard to kind of, because you have to, if you go through mountainous terrain, you have to spend an extra heart.
Especially since there's a lot of mountains drawn on the
Yeah,
board
yeah.
that are not mountain terrain.
Right, you're looking for the
Right.
symbol, not at the actual landscape.
So that symbol can be a
Right.
little bit, I think that's easy to miss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially because the one complaint that I had was the standees. I felt like were just a little bit too large. It kept blocking sight. And so if I needed to see, if I go that way, is there a mountain? I had to constantly move my standee out of the way to really see how many hearts it was going to take for the movement. It was just a little oversized, I felt.
Yeah, they are kind of larger than they need to be. Yeah.
They're similar to Near and Far size. I think that's maybe why it didn't throw me, is that, they're about the same size.
Now, what I did like, I liked the story. I thought the stories in it are fun. I like the fact that the stories are geared towards your characters, and the 4 characters are very They feel very different, and they're very asymmetrical. They have different amounts of hit points, different amounts of mana, different special ability, and different sets of upgrades. And they have a different
really
background story. Like the one robot cat is protecting a baby. You know, keeping the robot cat gets fought over in every game I've played. I've never seen
It's
a
a
game with
robot
that
cat.
robot cat not involved.
It's a robot cat.
Someone's playing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
The story element is interesting to me in that I focused more on. I played the first time I played the standard mode without the story element included at all, where you play the game where what would trigger the story becomes what's called a search token, and that's just an action you can take. You can search, you roll your 4-sided die, you take that amount of damage, and you flip it over and you get some kind of benefit, some kind of boon. In some ways, I have a sense that something I feel like we may all have an issue with, I'll just put it out there, the length of the game, I think is reduced if you play it that way. So I wonder I think when people come to this game, they're going to want to play it in the story mode. I'm wondering if that's the ideal way to play the game.
It might not be, but I'm going to want to do it that way.
I know, that's what
Right.
I'm saying. That creates a bit of an issue, is that I guess maybe I'll lead there. I'm taking us off the story, so I apologize.
No, we might as
that's
well
fine.
talk
Let's
about
talk
this.
about it,
This
yeah.
is my main #1 problem with this game.
Yeah.
It's too long. I will never play a 4-player game of this again.
Right,
And a
was rough.
2-player is still quite long. For me, the game feels like it's 1 round too long. It feels like it should have been 5 over 6. Unfortunately, the way the game ramps up, round 1's kind of a little boring compared to the other rounds because you have less money.
It's also shorter.
Yeah, you do a few
Oh,
things.
yeah, very much
And each
so, yeah.
round gets progressively longer.
Yes.
And since in the final scoring you wipe everything and do it, that last round, spend all your resources because
Right.
there's no
have
reason
to
not
go.
to.
Yeah, you
I
gotta
felt-
do it.
I felt like that last round was the most mechanical out of all of them because you're just like, okay, hold on, I've got to switch on the Euro mind. How do I spend these resources? How can I maximize, the amount of points that I'm getting out of it and the money and this and that, and you're just running through your specialist, upgrading your specialist. Just felt very base Euro mechanical in that last round, I would say. So you made the point that first round is kind of boring compared to the others. I want to say that last round, it's you go from boring to a really good middle to a very mechanical end, and that was an odd kind of transition or flow through the game.
Yeah, and bringing that up, I wanted to mention this, that I think that if you're teaching this game to new players, you absolutely must explain how the end of the game works before you get started. Now, I know that a lot of people teach games that way anyway, but I think it's crucial in this game because I think what it could lead to is if you don't explain that well, 3-hour-plus game potentially, they get to the last round and they find out, oh, I lose all my money, I lose all my resources. You don't really technically.
Yeah, we're scoring what
Right.
you can do, basically,
Right.
in one production. That's
Right.
what you're scoring.
Right. So you have to explain
you
that.
need to explain to people. You have to ramp up your production. You're going to be scored on one triggering of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what you score. But that money that you make, the resources you make and immediately sell for money,
Right.
that's your score. The coins are your score. And everything else you've done, missions and whatever. But you got to be forewarned. I agree. You will feel like you've been, had the rug pulled out from under you
Bamboozled.
if
Yeah.
you don't know that from the absolute beginning of the game
Right.
and know what you score. There's enough in this game to
Yes.
distract you where it might not be readily apparent what's good and what's not good, what am I actually scoring at the end of the game, and what's something that is good in game.
Right.
Right.
So that's a big consideration. Yeah.
I want to clarify. We said it's long. I want to be more specific on that. The box says 45 minutes per player. I cannot get there. And I consider myself a fairly quick player of games.
Yes.
And I even played one with my 2 daughters where I was like, go, move it. I was doing the bank. I cannot see that it's shorter than 1 hour and 15 minutes per player.
Especially if you're
And I
playing
feel like
story
that's
mode.
short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they say it is for Eurogame mode.
Standard mode. Yeah.
Yeah, they specifically say story will be longer, and it's obvious.
Sure.
When you are doing the Eurogame mode, whatever it is, standard, roll a die, flip a coin, take 2 XP, I'm done. The other mode is read a story, pick a choice, roll, read the consequences. I mean, it's
Yeah, but you
going
still
to be
have
longer.
on my turn, I can move. Where can I move? Anywhere on the board, almost.
Sure,
Pretty much, yeah.
What am I going to do? And the amount of choices, it's almost sandboxy, the game,
Yes.
is
Yeah,
a lot.
feel.
So that's going to naturally add to the length.
It's not a short game. I think we all can agree on the fact that the game
It is.
feels a little overly long. It's not just that it's a long game.
Right.
It's overly long. There's no getting around that. I agree with you. I will not play with more than 2.
Right.
And
I'm
we've been
just not
playing different
interested in
groups,
playing a
too.
game that long.
We
We
have.
all played it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I played a game with Camille, and Camille played a game with you. But other than
Yeah.
that, we've been playing in different groups. So that's not because we're slow players.
Right.
No, not at all.
How long did the solo take?
Solo was still lengthy,
Really?
and I played it standard mode. I didn't even
Okay.
because you
Was
can
it more
play with
than
the
an hour?
story. Oh yeah. It was definitely more than an hour. You play just briefly. You play against a bot. You have another player board over there, and you're flipping over cards. It's a well done solo variant, and it's important to mention. I think if you are a solo gamer, this is the only game of this series that has a dedicated solo mode. Where you play as one character, because there was an expansion for Near and Far that made a cooperative mode that you can play it, but this is a dedicated, you play as one character,
Yeah.
you've got a deck of cards that controls the bot. It's very easy to administer, but it's still lengthy. It's still a very lengthy game, and also it's a huge table hog. I mean,
Huge.
for a solo
Yes.
game, when I do just strictly solo reviews, I mentioned setup and teardown. This is a full setup of the game. I mean, it's no quicker to set up a solo game than it is a 2-player game or a 3-player game.
Sure.
And you have to take that into account.
I mean, a 2-player game filled up a whole table this size.
Yeah.
It did.
You know, a 4-player game, we were,
Yeah, it's
Bumping
time. I mean,
elbows
there's
the
a lot. You
entire
have
time.
2 boards with the spread of buildings, which is
Right.
like a
Yeah.
3rd board.
It is.
You know?
Yeah.
Now, we've talked the game length about that a lot, and we've talked about the table, necessity for it a lot. Switching gears, I will say, to me, this game feels like Ryan Lockett's greatest hits.
Sure.
It feels like it's got a little bit of above and below. It's got a little bit of the near and far. Some, Euro, plenty of Euro stuff. It kind of feels like a celebration of the stuff he normally does, I guess is what I'm saying. So if you like him, you like his ideas from previous games, then I do think you'll like it. I think you'll appreciate all the different things. I think the combat system is
It's the best he's done.
deceptively simple. It's
love
very
the
clean.
combat
The best
system.
one he's done. I think.
It's I think my favorite Ryan Lockett game is Sleeping Gods, but this combat system is so clean compared to that system, especially. And I like that, but it's so straightforward.
I saw a D4 combat system, and I thought, this is probably going to be terrible. That was my first initial thought was, okay, you're rolling a D4 to do your combat. I felt like that was going to be hard to pull off. It's great.
It's great.
It's great. I mean, it's my favorite part of the game.
Well, rolling a
honestly.
D4 is not great. I hate that.
Yeah, but you can
yes, I like the
you
combat
can get
system.
some of those alternate D4s if you really don't like the pyramid shape. But that system is great where you've got the market of the offensive and defensive skills that you can do, and you also have character specific skills. I like that too.
Yes.
I
That's
really
a
like
really neat system. So some things we've talked about, things that didn't work well for us. Combat is the thing that works best for me. I also do like the way the specialists work out, how you gain specialists, how you trigger your specialists, how you can use other people's specialists, how they can use yours, and kind of that. Those are my favorite elements of the game, and I think that is done well.
I agree. I like all of that stuff quite a bit. I think mechanically this game is very robust.
All right. Well, let's find out what people think. What do you think, Camille?
I really liked it. I like, to your point, Z, that it's a lot of his best hits, put together. Like I said, I saw a lot of Islebound in it, which I really like. I saw some Above and Below, that kind of stuff. And I really liked the balance of Euro versus the Ameritrash with the storytelling and that. And I just thought we had very different play styles, and at the end we came in pretty closely scoring, and I really liked it. I'm going to give it an 8.5. It's definitely one that I want to keep exploring and see it through the different chapters and see what comes of it.
I'm close. I really enjoyed it. I really like the game. It's one I want to keep playing. I want to keep exploring, but I have to take those caveats into account when I'm recommending it. It's very long. I don't want to play with more than 2, yet the game's 2 to 4. That's got a ding. Oh, 1 to 4. I'm sorry. Yeah. So that dings it for me, even if it won't affect me. You know, if I am rating it for
fair.
my own purposes, I'd give it a higher score. I like it more than what I'm saying. But taking that into account, I'm coming in at an 8 for this one. So still very good. It feels celebratory again of Ryan Lauka's style and world and mechanisms and storytelling. It's comfortable to go back to his lush, world.
Yeah.
But yes, it's long, and yes, it's going to outstay its welcome, especially at 4 players.
Yeah.
That's a lot of game. And it feels more Eurogame than Sleeping Gods by far.
For sure. For
So
sure.
it's not that the story's going to keep you hooked. You'll read a little story every 10 minutes, maybe. So, yeah, 8. Strong 8, but an 8.
I'm much lower, actually.
Oh, okay.
I toyed with giving it a 5.
Wow.
But I'm giving it a 6. And I'll tell you why. Because the things I like, and while I'm playing the game, I have a lot of fun in many ways. I love the combat. I'll go around and fight all day long. The economics and building, there's a lot of things in this game I consider to be gamery. I don't like that building thing. It just feels like when they were playtesting it, someone said, this is always the first building you should build, this is the second one you should build. So instead they're like, pick one on the outside, then build next to that, and that just requires this much more space on the board for each player.
Sure.
It requires more thought. If I build this building, then I can build this. And I just thought that detracts. It doesn't.
There's no thematic
I guess the
connection
big
there
thing
at
is
all.
I
can
like
see
the
that,
story, and this game does not make the story and the mechanisms mesh together. It feels like you stop
Yes,
the mechanics
yeah.
of the game,
Right.
and now story.
I
now
agree.
back to the mechanisms.
I agree with that somewhat, which is why I also thought, when we talked about this, that this felt to me closer to Above and Below, and it felt like a reworked Above and Below with where the mechanisms were first, rather than Near and Far, which I thought really brought up story. When Near and Far came
Well, that
out, it
makes
was
sense.
like, wow.
I gave it Above and Below also like a 6 too. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, so. But to me, it blows away Above and Below, is what I'm saying.
I love the combat system a lot, and I would like to just go around and fight stuff all day long. And in fact, that kind of fight
Like
stuff,
this
do
one.
stories. But I get the economic parts of it. It just felt, I got to fill this building with this row of buildings. Get 4 different specialists. It just felt very cold. And the main reason I'd give it a lower score is because I can play Near and Far. I'm not even promoting a competitor.
Right.
I'm promoting the same company. I think Near and Far is that. I mean, Near and Far is a 9 for me. I really like that game.
That's interesting.
This one, no, and the length. I just can't get around that length. When we played 4, I was like, this is insanely long. I was like, oh, well, 2 will fix it. And it was shorter, but
It
it
is
wasn't.
shorter, but it's not a
it was
short game.
still really long.
Yes.
As a side note, both my children are giving it a 7.5. I'm supposed to tell you that.
Oh, okay. So this is the difficulty of being the last one, because you brought up a lot of things I did. I personally cannot rate this game in a bubble, because I've played Above and Below, I've played Near and Far, I've played Islebound. So since it is a greatest hits, I agree with you 100%
think
on
so?
that.
Okay.
I've got so many contextual points
Sure.
to pull from. And so I'm recommending it at a 7 with reservations, with caveats. If I can take those caveats away, I'd be at an 8.5 or a 9.
Yeah.
Because the things I like, I think, are great. The best combat system he's done, I think. The mechanics of how you utilize your specialists are great. But it's too long. To me, this is a 1 or 2 player game, and quite honestly, it's probably a 1 player game for me. This is the game that, if I'm going to play a Ryan Lockett game solo, it's going to be this. First of all, I don't have too many options, but it's going to be this one. But even then, I'm going to be thinking, okay, am I willing to take this off the shelf, spend 10 minutes setting it up, 10 minutes putting it away? It's going to be very specific times when I'm going to want to play this. And so I recommend it with caveats, so a 7. That's where
I can
I'm
see what
at.
you're saying. I mean, I think
Yeah.
you recommend it with those caveats, and I think that I did kind of go through again that up and down. As I was thinking about it, but what it came down to is, would I bring it to the table? Would I be excited about bringing it to the table? Would I recommend it to the table? Yes, I'd explain those caveats, but that wouldn't decrease my excitement to get it to the table. And that's why I think it's. I was able, I think, maybe put it a little bit more in a bubble.
Yeah.
Because it's still, I would be 8.5, of excitement to get it to the table
Got
that
it.
often.
Yeah, and me too. And I do like those mechanisms that you're talking about. The building thing, fully mechanical, completely meaningless. I really enjoyed it.
Really?
I
I
really
really did
enjoyed
not.
that puzzle.
Yeah.
Well, if I got to start eating away at this Dig Dug over here, so that I can go to this one, and so yes, mechanical.
Sure, but if
absolutely.
that was the whole game, then I'm like, okay, that's a piece. It almost feels like Isaac Childress designed this game in some ways.
It is sort of a Frankenstein-esque
It is.
thing, and that's where the greatest hits thing comes from, partly. But I liked all the parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, I think I'm curious to see what the reaction to the general public. We don't really know that yet, but either way, it's definitely one that you might want to check out. I'd recommend if maybe playing with fewer players first. See, but that's now or never. And
That's right.
Also, don't make dumb jokes about the game title. I've heard them all. I think. Do you want to play this game?
Yeah,
Anyway,
right.
until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Z Garcia.
I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
And I'm Mike Felicio.
Have fun. I don't even have a thing to say.
Now?
Fighting monsters.
Or nevering.
I thought we weren't doing no jokes.
Oh yeah.
I missed the memo.